Hey, and welcome back to Talk of Better Worlds. I'm SirFelixTheCat, and this is The Blender. So, it's currently November, and as the year is kind of winding down, I figured this would be kind of a good time to go back and take a look at some of the studios that we sadly lost this year, because it was a pretty big year of hard hits to gaming studios. So, first, let's get into one that a lot of people love. I personally didn't have the biggest connection to it. The games that they directly worked on weren't really some of my favorites. I don't play many horror games. I play some randomly, but it's not really a genre I go to. But we're going to start off with Arcane Studios, or at least Arcane Austin. They are one of the subdivisions of Arcane Studios, and sadly, they were closed earlier this year by Microsoft. The games that they're best known for would be Prey, which was a huge hit. A lot of people love that one. I'll give it credit. Never played it myself. But sadly, the other one they made was Redfall. And there's a bunch of interesting footage you can go out there and find about the background of this game and how sadly this was kind of Microsoft and Bethesda's fault for not really giving this studio the guidance and support that they needed. At least that's coming from the people who worked for Arcane Austin. So, I mean, it's really sad to see that one go. They did have potential. I do see that Prey was a good game, just, not my cup of tea. But, let's pour one out for them. Next, we're going to talk about another one that a lot of people might not really be too familiar with, at least not by the studio name. We're going to talk about Ready at Dawn. This is another studio that was closed this year, and it's very sad again to see them go. Ready at Dawn, in 2020, I think it was 2020, they were bought out by Oculus Studios, Meta's gaming studio companies for the Oculus Rift and all the other Meta Facebook VR things. They weren't always a VR company. This company actually goes back to 2006. They did some games for the PSP, for the Wii, PS3, PS4, Microsoft, Windows. The game that I first was introduced to them by was God of War Chains of Olympus on the PSP. This was way back in, I played it in 2010, so it was probably like 2009 or 8. I'm going to go with 2008. But yeah, they were a great little studio. That's probably one of my favorite God of War games. And they later on did, let's get some footage up, or some Wikipedia. All right, so it shows here that they did God of War Chains of Olympus, they did Okami on the Wii, they did God of War Ghost of Sparta, God of War Origins Collection, which that was a PS3 release. But the game that I like them the most for was The Order 1886. Now, this is a very, as you can see from the score here, it got a 63 out of 100 on Metacritic. I don't think that's just. This is a fantastic game. It does have its flaws. It's not a perfect, it's not a 10 out of 10 or anything. But it has great shooting, like great gunplay. And the story is interesting enough. It's something that leaves you kind of wanting more, especially by the end of the game. I mean, you will feel kind of burnt at the end of the game. You're just like, this is where it's ending, and that's not cool. But what you do get out of it is fantastic. It's a fantastic little story. It's like a Victorian-esque, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Almost Tesla punk. I mean, you do meet Nikolai Tesla in there. He's the one who makes all your weapons and gadgets, and I think that's incredibly dope. But yeah, it's very sad to see that one go. On the Oculus, after they were bought by the studio, they made one game, Lone Echo 2, which is an adventure game. I'm not familiar with Lone Echo. I don't play VR games, don't have a VR headset. But I'm sad to see that one go, especially since this one didn't do terribly. It got a 78 out of 100. Company had potential. I mean, go back and look at Okami and the God of War Chains of Olympus. Those are both in the 90s. Like, they did fairly well. It's sad to see them go. Again, pour one out for the studio. Sad times, man. And now we're going to keep the sad times going. So we're going to go on to another one. This one sadly was closed by Embracer Group, which it makes me mad. So let's talk about Embracer Group for a second. So Embracer Group is basically some of the heads of THQ Nordic and some investor firm got together and they made Embracer Group. That way they can make basically have all these studios underneath them and just pump out games. That was their pitch. Instead, they bought a bunch of studios. They lost a deal with, I believe it was Saudi Arabia, and then they end up having to sell a bunch of stuff and closing studios, and that was devastating. I mean, they're the ones who bought Crystal Dynamics and stuff like that. Like, they bought studios. They bought good studios to do nothing with them. And it's very sad because it's THQ Nordic, and they're not bad. Like, once Nordic bought THQ, that was fantastic. That was a great move to do, but sadly, we see what came of that. But the studio we're talking about here is Volition. Volition is probably best known for Saints Row. They're also well known for Red Faction. For Red Faction, that's probably where I was first introduced. Well, I can't say that. Saints Row 1 was where I was first introduced to them. But the game that made me fall in love with the studio would be Red Faction Guerrilla. If you've never played it, definitely go check it out. I believe it's on everything. I know it's on the Switch. That is a fantastic game. Basically, take your hammer, take some explosives, and completely demolish a building. And this was back before we had all those pixel games where you can just drive a tractor through a building and it all falls down. This is well before then, and the effects of it, the physics was just amazing. It was great for its time. When was that? That was 2009 or something like that. That was pretty early. Let me do some reading. All right, so Red Faction Guerrilla was released in 2009. That was on the PS3 and Xbox, and then later that year for Windows. And then it came to Switch in 2019. So, I mean, for 10 years, this has been one of the coolest looking games, at least for physics in the sense of demolishing buildings and whatnot. The level of destruction you can do in this game is just fantastic. Sadly, Volition is probably more recently best known for the Saints Row reboot, which, again, this is another studio that's under, like I said, it's under Embracer Group. And people had high expectations for this game. I mean, it's Saints Row, and this is made by the people who created Saints Row. Sadly, this game is, it left you wanting more. And I mean, I was a defender of it first because I did have fun playing it. I understood there was a ton of jank. I didn't get the whole part where everybody hates the main character group. I think that's just a preference thing. It doesn't bother me one bit. As long as we're not talking about Final Fantasy 13, I'm not going to complain about the characters much. I haven't seen anything as bad as Final Fantasy 13 when it comes to that. But yeah, that game, it had its issues. Car design was fun. Customizing your cars, pimping them out, that was dope. But missions weren't the greatest. Some were frustrating. There was a lack of side quests that were unique. Basically, you had 4 different types of side quests, and you basically just go to different areas of the city and do the same thing over and over, just a slightly different layout. It wasn't good. Sadly, that game's probably, as someone who defended it at first, I can probably only give it about a 6 to 6.5 out of 10. That's bad. And when I'm giving it that low of a score, that's absolutely terrible. But yeah, so Volition's gone. That's one that I'm very, very sad about. Now we're going to go on to our final one. This one is an Embracer Group company. And it makes me very sad. Me and Hawk have talked about this one on the podcast before. And we're talking about Piranha Bytes. The day I woke up and saw the news, hey, they closed Piranha Bytes, it was just you've got to be joking. This is the company that has brought us janky games, but great games. I'm talking about Elix, and I'm talking about Risen. Like, these are fantastic games. Yeah, like, they have their issues. But when you actually get down to playing the game, play Elix 1. Just, it's got to be cheap right now. Go find it on PC or Xbox or PlayStation. Find it somewhere. It's not on Switch. But pick up this game and just give it a shot. Just like get through a little bit of the jank, get used to the combat because it is kind of stiff. But once you really get into it and see just how crazy and beautiful this world they created is, and just how fantastic of a place it is, I mean, by no means do you ever want to live in the world of Elix, but it's a very well-made RPG, an open world RPG. It's got great characters. It's got just a beautiful plot. You have one group of people who are alive. They're trying to bring back nature and use magic and stuff like that. You have the thieves who are doing like, thief stuff, and they're killing each other and other people. You have the clerics, which are like tech wizards, essentially. They build like little mini mechs and all this crazy stuff. And then you have what I'm going to call the Nazi group, because that's basically what they are. They're supremacists. They think they're the greatest, and they use Elix as a drug, not just to get high off of, but it like gives them power. It makes them stronger. It's what makes them super pale for some reason. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's such a great game. Luckily for this one, they're not completely dead. Like, yeah, this studio known as Piranha Bytes is gone, but the heads of the company of the studio actually went out and they started their own new company, which I hope they come back and bring out, like, I don't know, they can't do Elix again unless they buy it from THQ Nordic, Embracer Group. But maybe they'll come out with like Celix, Melix, Felix, SirFelixTheCat. They'll come out with SirFelixTheCat the game. Yeah, that's what we're getting. SirFelixTheCat the game. But yeah, so those are some studios that, at least big studios, there's many more. We lost several studios this year. We've lost some phone game studios, just studios across the board. There's been a lot of layoffs. I feel sorry for all the people who worked for those companies. Like, big shout out to them for what they did. I mean, even if you don't like it, understand that they dedicated their time, their life to making these games, these things that we play. And again, it might not be your game, but it's a game. People are out there enjoying it, and that's what matters when it comes to gaming, just enjoying it. So a big shout out to them. I fully respect those people, and I hope they are back on their feet. I hope they found out where to go and found something great to make their career just go on. Don't let games die. It's sad when that happens. I mean, it's like the team who's making what is it called? Dragon Age the Veilguard. Like, imagine if this game, like, it's doing well in sales from what I've heard, but imagine if it didn't. I mean, yeah, there's controversial stuff in there. You might want to say, oh, woke, and have no clue what the word means and just show the world that you're ignorant. But anyways, imagine if it didn't do well. We could lose those people. Yeah, the writing might not be the best. I've heard that from many people who are actually working in the game industry, that it's not the best writing, but they still put time into it. They did what they could. They might not be the best at what they did, but they tried. And that's all that matters. I mean, I've played games that have terrible writing, and I've loved them. I've had games that basically have no storytelling. Like, look at Dark Souls. Don't get offended at me. Dark Souls doesn't have like great story writing. It has great lore, I guess you would call it. But for a story itself, it's trash. You can love the game. I really don't care if you do or not. Many people do. I've played them, and I'm trash at them. I don't like how slow the combat is. That's just my personal thing. I like to play JRPGs where you're usually kind of faster, like Tales of. Tales of is one of my favorite series, and that's just like quick action when you're in battle. But yeah, I'm getting off topic. Anyways, shout out to all these companies and all these people who work for these companies. And let's pour one out, and let's just celebrate and hope that we don't see this again in 2025. That's all we can do, is just hope that we don't see this again in 2025. But yeah, that's all I had. So until next time, take care. Hey, thanks for watching.
Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't.
Let us know what you think about the channel.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Tell your mom.